The Unbreakable Contract, a Judge Judy story of trust, teeth, and 10,000 regrets. The gavel cracked against its sounding block with a report as sharp and final as a gunshot, a sound that echoed through the cavernous television studio and seemed to suck the air from the room, leaving the two parties standing before the bench gasping in a vacuum of anticipation. All eyes were locked on the woman seated elevated before them, a figure of such formidable presence that the entire world of the courtroom seemed to bend towards her, a gravitational pull of authority and razor-sharp intellect. This was Judge Judy, and her courtroom was not a place for vagaries or emotional pleas. It was a stark arena where the cold, hard steel of the law met the messy, bleeding heart of human conflict. The case that was about to unfold was a simple one on its surface, a dispute over a dog, but as the participants would soon learn, it was a tangled web woven from threads of broken friendship, parental terror, and the devastating weight of a signature on a dotted line. The plaintiff, a woman named Sarah King, clutched the edges of her podium as if it were a life raft in a churning sea, her face a pale mask of anxiety and simmering indignation. Across from her stood the defendant, a man named David Billings, who appeared calm, resolute, and utterly convinced of his position, his arms crossed in a posture of quiet defiance. The distance between them was only a few feet, but it felt like a chasm of 750 miles, the very distance that now lay between their homes and their former friendship. Judge Judy began, her voice a calibrated instrument of inquiry, each word precise and loaded. "Miss King," she said, and the title hung in the air, making Sarah King flinch slightly. "How long do you know Mr. Billings?" The question was simple, but it was the first thread that would begin to unravel a decade of history. Sarah King, her voice trembling with a nervous energy she fought to control, explained that she had known David Billings for about 10 years, a relationship forged in the quiet, sacred halls of their local church in Virginia. This wasn't a transaction with a stranger. This was a deal made with a man she had broken bread with, a man she had prayed beside, a man whose character she believed was as solid as the church pews they once shared. This foundation of trust was the cornerstone of her entire case, the reason she had bypassed every local breeder in Virginia to place her family's safety and happiness in the hands of her old friend from church, David Billings. The judge, having meticulously reviewed the paperwork, laid out the facts with the dispassionate clarity of a surgeon outlining a procedure. David Billings had moved from their shared community to Cullman, Alabama, a sprawling 750-mile chasm now separating their lives. There, he bred German shepherds, not as a mere hobby, but as his business, his livelihood. The narrative continued. There came a time when Sarah King, a mother of 2, decided her family needed a dog. Her daughter, a 19-year-old named Emily with a passion for running, was training for a half marathon, spending long, solitary hours on the trails. And Sarah King's maternal heart was clenched with a constant, low-grade fear. She wanted a companion for Emily, a loyal guardian to lope alongside her, a furry shield against the unseen dangers of the world. So she called her trusted friend David Billings. The conversation was warm, familiar, filled with the easy cadence of old camaraderie. David Billings said he had the perfect dog for her family, a German shepherd that would fit their needs. He offered not just to sell the dog, but to personally make the long drive from Alabama to Virginia, to deliver the animal himself and spend several days with the King family, showing them the ropes of training, of care, of building a bond with their new protector. It was a promise that went far beyond a simple sale. It was a package deal wrapped in the reassuring paper of friendship. They agreed on a price, $3,500 for the dog, plus the additional cost of his transportation, a sum that would later be revealed as a significant $950. The scene Judge Judy painted was one of initial bliss. David Billings arrived. He spent 4 days with Sarah King and her children, Emily and her 14-year-old brother, Christopher. The dog, a majestic and powerful German shepherd, seemed to be everything they had hoped for. In the warmth of that kitchen, surrounded by her children and her old friend, Sarah King felt a surge of relief and happiness. She wrote the check for $3,500, a substantial sum, but it felt like an investment in her daughter's safety and the family's joy. She did not, however, pay the additional $950 for transportation, a detail that would later loom large. For a short golden period, all was well. But then, the idyll shattered. The dog, the supposed guardian, began to change. A low guttural growl replaced the friendly pant. A playful nip became a calculated, aggressive snap. The animal's eyes, once warm and trusting, now held a flicker of something unpredictable and dangerous. The terror began subtly, a cold trickle of fear that soon became a torrent. The dog became aggressive with Emily, the very person it was meant to protect. It showed its teeth to Sarah King, a clear, unnerving challenge to her authority in her own home. The fear in the household became a palpable, living entity, stalking the halls alongside the family pet. Panicked, Sarah King did what she thought was her only recourse. She called David Billings. Her voice was likely frantic, laced with the protective fury of a mother whose child has been threatened. "I don't want this dog anymore," she told him. And here, in the murky aftermath of that phone call, the stories diverged, the fuzzy part of the tale, as Judge Judy aptly called it. Ultimately, Sarah King returned the dog to David Billings at her own expense, and now she stood in this courtroom demanding her $3,500 back, plus the cost of shipping the menace back to Alabama. David Billings, however, was immovable. He was not giving the money back. His position, as he stated it, was that he had nicely, out of the goodness of his heart and their past friendship, offered her another dog if she wasn't happy with this one. He was also counterclaiming for that $950 in transportation costs that she still owed him. The legal battle lines were drawn, but Judge Judy immediately zeroed in on the heart of the matter, the one piece of evidence that stood like an unassailable fortress against Sarah King's emotional tsunami, the contract. "Do you have a written contract with Mr. Billings?" Judge Judy asked, and the air in the room seemed to still. Sarah King, perhaps hoping the personal nature of their relationship would override dry paperwork, admitted, "No, ma'am, I do not." But she quickly corrected herself, "Just a bill of sale." With a look that could slice through steel, Judge Judy retorted, "A bill of sale is a contract." The document was produced, a simple piece of paper that now held the power to decide the fate of thousands of dollars and a decade-long friendship. Judge Judy read it aloud, and each word was a nail in the coffin of Sarah King's hopes. It stated in unequivocal terms that it was the entire agreement between the parties. It stated that no other agreements or warranties existed. It stated that all sales were final, and both Sarah King and David Billings had signed it right there in her kitchen, in what must have felt at the time like a mere formality. Sarah King, sensing the case slipping away, launched her desperate defense. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described the scene that the cold contract could not capture. "The day that I signed that in my kitchen," she pleaded. "Mr. Billings said to me in front of my children, 'Look, if this dog doesn't work out for you, I absolutely will give you your money back.'" This was her truth. This was the promise that had sealed the deal, the verbal handshake that had meant more to her than any legalese on a page. She knew what the bill of sale said, but she believed in the word of her friend. Judge Judy, however, was the embodiment of the law, not of sentiment. She launched into a masterful, if devastating, explanation of a legal concept known as puffing. It was the same as a used car salesman guaranteeing a car was perfect, only for the buyer to discover it was a lemon. Unless that guarantee was in the written contract, it was meaningless, just puffing sales talk, not a legally binding promise. The contract was king. The four corners of that document defined their entire relationship in the eyes of the law. David Billings was not a guarantor of the dog's future temperament. The only thing he had contractually guaranteed was that the dog would not suffer from severe hip dysplasia. Everything else, the promise of a perfect family pet, a gentle running companion for Emily, was irrelevant in this stark, fluorescent-lit arena. The suspense built as Judge Judy laid out the brutal logic of the law. David Billings didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to offer a refund. He didn't have to offer a replacement dog. The fact that he was willing to give her another dog was, legally speaking, an act of pure generosity, a gratuity he was in no way obligated to provide. Sarah King, however, stuck to her guns, her voice rising with frustrated conviction. "No, ma'am," she insisted. "He told me he would absolutely return my money." She was arguing spirit over letter, memory over ink. The tension was electric, a battle between two irreconcilable realities. In a moment of high drama, Sarah King, pushed to the brink, presented her most powerful piece of evidence, not a document, but a consequence. "This is what the dog did to my child," she declared, likely showing a photograph or a scar, a visceral, bloody testament to the danger that had invaded her home. It was a heart-wrenching play, a mother's last, desperate attempt to make the court see, to feel, the reality of her nightmare. But Judge Judy was unmoved by the emotional display, not out of coldness, but out of a profound commitment to the consistent application of the law. "Mrs. King," she stated, her voice firm, "he's not a guarantor, nor is any dog breeder a guarantor of what happens once the dog leaves their premises. Otherwise, the whole industry would come to a halt." The message was clear and crushing. The law could not compensate her for her fear, her betrayal, or the mark on her daughter's skin. The system was designed for breaches of contract, not breaches of trust. The climax of the story arrived as Judge Judy presented Sarah King with an impossible choice, a verdict in the form of an ultimatum. She could accept David Billings' offer of a replacement puppy, an AKC German Shepherd that she could train from scratch, sell, or do with as she pleased, or she could refuse and lose everything. "You make up your mind," Judge Judy commanded, the full weight of the court's authority behind her words. "What do you want to do?" The camera likely closed in on Sarah King's face, capturing the storm of emotions, the anger, the humiliation, the bitter taste of injustice. She had come for justice, for vindication, for the return of her money and the public shaming of the man who had, in her eyes, betrayed her. What she was being offered felt like a consolation prize from the very person who had wronged her. Her pride, her fury, her profound sense of betrayal all boiled over into one final, defiant statement. "I don't want a dog from this man," she declared, her voice thick with emotion. It was a decision made not from a place of logic, but from the depths of a broken trust. She would rather have nothing than accept anything more from David Billings. And with that, it was over. "Great," said Judge Judy, her tone final. "Judgment on the counterclaim for $950. Your claim is dismissed." The gavel fell. Sarah King had not only lost her case and her $3,500, but